Spaced repetition, the backbone behind active recall and the secret behind studying. Is it though? Well, I'll explain exactly what spaced repetition is, how it works, how you can use it, and the actions you should take if you want to reduce the amount of time spent studying, all while achieving better results. I'm Eddie G, let's begin. Alright, so what is spaced repetition? Well, I'll put it as an example. You study today, then again in 3 days, then again in 7 days, 2 weeks, a month, 2, etc. Get the pattern? Spaced repetition is studying and recalling information using increased intervals over time. You are basically allowing yourself to forget the material you study. Do it once, you'll understand it. Do it twice, you'll remember it. And do it many times, and you'll know it. It's scientifically backed and proven to improve your memory retention. I'll be honest, this method can be hard, especially when you're cramming for exams only a short while before. That's why I highly recommend if you're using spaced repetition, you should start earlier on in the year, a good while before exams. And something to keep in mind, you're increasing the intervals gradually and not just studying it once a day only to study it next month or two later. Instead, go from days to weeks to then months. And I think what I've learned from this method is that it only works for subjects or topics that you struggle on the most. So what I'm saying is, if you over-rely on spaced repetition, you're not going to have enough time to complete absolutely everything. So focus on what you need to do. And how do you do that? You use a retrospective revision timetable. More on that in a while. And when using spaced study sessions, you should be actively recalling material and not just passively learning. If you want to know how to apply active recall, which is another study method, I have a full video on that on my channel, including 10 study methods and a system to build. You can find it on my channel. Although spaced repetition is very straightforward and there aren't many things that branch out of it like study techniques or methods, I've still listed 3 important applications that you could make in order to use spaced repetition effectively. The first method is the basic method for spaced repetition, and that is where exactly what it is, using active recall with increased intervals. So basically just using intervals. You can set intervals along just about any study method or technique that you already use, and through it you can memorize just about anything. Well, enough for exams anyways. And it's a very common scientific system or structure that's been developed as a baseline for this method of setting intervals. And that is, you study the topic once today, next in 7 days, and then in 16, and then 35 days. You can study more or less than this baseline structure, but these intervals have been proven to be the most effective. But obviously it also depends on how well you can retain information, so how you study and the length of your intervals totally depends on you. And this might even sound completely unrealistic because there's no way you're going to get through every little detail in a specific subject. That's why it completely depends on what you try to focus on. If you try to focus on everything, then more or less it's just not going to work. So study it once and select or schedule specific days, and that is to go back over what you studied in particular and focus on nothing else, and then just repeat, all using this method of intervals. And I'll explain how you can incorporate this better soon enough. Number 2, the lightness system. And this is a very simple but effective spaced repetition method, a specific study method actually, which involves flashcards and boxes. You have 5 boxes, level 1 to 5. All new flashcards start in box number 1 or level 1. And when you study using the flashcards, if you get it right, you move it up 1 box. If you get it wrong, you move it down 1 box. Very straightforward. And if you want to challenge yourself, you can move any wrong answers all the way back to square 1 at box 1. And as it implies, your aim is to get all the flashcards to box number 5, which means you master the card. And of course, we're talking about spaced repetition, so include intervals for each box. And this also depends on you. But as an example, you could look at box 1 every day, box 2 every 2 days, box 3 every 3 days, 4 every 9 days, and box number 5 every 14 days. But once again, completely customizable. And method number 3, the retrospective revision timetable. It's an extremely useful visual that shows you exactly what you have to study, how good you are at each, and making it easy to add relevant spaces or intervals into your studying. I will walk you through this step by step. So, a retrospective revision timetable is very straightforward. So for the timetable, you can use Notion, Google Sheets, or what I'm using in this case, Excel. And on Notion, creating this database would be different and a bit more complicated, so I would stick to one of the other 2. And when you have access to one, create a blank document. Step number 2, you're going to create a slide or section for each course or subject you have. However, if you want to save more space or storage on your device, I would recommend making a blank document or sheet for each, because what happened last year is I ran out of space and my whole thing got erased. So unless you don't have a lot of subjects, make sure you have enough storage for this. Step number 3, you're going to add a title in the top corner for topics or subsections that you have in the subject. And underneath this, you're going to list all the topics that you have. And number 4, the rest of the space is for all the magic. Whenever you study a specific topic within this subject, you're going to add a date on that row, and you're going to do the same as you study each topic and continue adding to that row. And this way you'll know exactly when you studied them, and you can add relevant intervals or spaces between each study session, and you can keep adding dates to the adjacent boxes. Step number 5, whoever watched my active recall video will know how great this is, and that is color coding. And basically you're just going to color code each of the boxes you place a date in. As you do so, after a study session, you will first put in the date, and then on top of that, color in the box in one of 3 colors. Red if you can't understand or remember anything on that topic, or if you feel like you don't know it well enough. Yellow if you're in the middle of knowing a topic, you have a good understanding of it but difficult to remember. And green if you understand and remember the topic really well and you're pretty much confident to do any exam on it. And if you want any other options, feel free to add any other colors or levels as you wish. And trust me, doing this will give you a much better understanding of where you are and how well you know each topic, as well as reminding you to focus on what really matters. So when you have a baseline along all the topics, you know that you have to prioritize the reds and yellows before the greens. What's really good about the retrospective timetable is so easy to make. Instead of spending your time making a specific time-blocked calendar of study schedules before an exam, it will save so much of your time and you'll know exactly what to study and even when to study it next. And this is probably the only and best method that I know on spaced repetition myself. So that's it. Make the timetable, you study, fill in the date, how well you know it, and you can even give yourself a reminder of when to study it next. What I would say is you study each and every topic very briefly. First of all, if you're starting at the end of the year, this might not be possible. If you're starting early on or not too close to your exams, what I would do is go through each topic one by one or in your preference of order and go back over the material, see what you can recall and retrieve as information, and establish a baseline level of either red, yellow, or green for each topic that you have within a subject. And this way for the next session you know exactly what to begin with. Alright, so I'm not going to talk too much about the science behind spaced repetition, but for your greater understanding, I'll give you a very quick summary of why this works. And it all started with a man named Hermann Ebbinghaus, and he's discovered some very key things in the learning process. But eventually he came up with the idea of forgetting on a graph. The x-axis shows the time in days after the initial learning. The amount of material retained is represented on the y-axis. This is the amount of material remembered. Basically, it shows that when you first study a topic, you will remember pretty much all of it, and then slowly, over time, you'll begin to forget it. And to combat this is the learning curve, or as you know now, spaced repetition. By actively learning at gradually increasing intervals, you'll remember more information for a longer period of time, which establishes a better long-term memory of a topic. And because you continue forgetting the information you learned, by retrieving it actively, it will build the neural connections and some other brain processes. But that's a quick summary of the science behind spaced repetition. So, if there's one advice I can give for spaced repetition, I've said it before and I say it for a lot of things, is to not over-rely on it. Realistically, you're not going to be able to study everything on a specific topic or subject. You just can't. You won't be able to remember anything if you rely too much on this, or active recall as a matter of fact, because the last thing you want to be doing is burning yourself out and not being able to remember anything. I used the retrospective timetable last year for my main exams, and I had 9 subjects with a ton of topics in each. And what did I do? I tried studying every single topic one by one first. Now, of course, I started early on in the year, but after a whole year of studying, I still only got through each topic once. So just that first time. Did go back over the harder topics twice, but that was probably 1 month before the exams. Less than 1 month. I dove right in, but when using spaced repetition, what I've learned is that you have to start slowly, and that way you might actually get through more. And please, when using this, focus on the reds and yellows, and only at the end recheck the greens. So to finish it off, I'm going to leave you with a small challenge. Pick one of the methods I mentioned, although really there is only one primary one. Make your own spaced repetition system and try using it for the next week or exam that you have. That's it. Just apply. And that's pretty much everything I know and what you hopefully needed to know on spaced repetition. But remember, if you want to study more effectively, you have to be applying active recall into your actual study sessions. Spaced repetition is just the breaking thing. Active recall is the real thing, and if you want to know more on that, I have a video on that up here. I'll continue making videos on studying in the future, and even a full guide and the levels to studying later on. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you again very soon. Goodbye.